I'm Cindy Briggs, and this is Soldier's Heart. I met Syd LeBrun at a veterans event in Greensboro, North Carolina. The first thing I noticed about him was his t-shirt. See, most of the men at these events wear a lot of veteran-related patriotic gear, World War II veteran ball caps or Army t-shirts. Not Syd. His shirt proudly proclaimed, "I heart boobies." It kind of grabs your attention. Just beneath the writing on the shirt was an image of two blue webbed feet. It was a shirt Syd bought on a trip to the Galapagos Islands, and the boobies in question were the blue-footed kind, the distinctive bird that lives in the region. I laughed out loud when I saw it. I knew we were going to be friends, and I also knew my interview with Syd was going to be something special. This is the first two-part episode of Soldier's Heart. In this episode and the next, you'll get to know Syd, who served in the infantry in Europe during World War II. Syd is a Purple Heart recipient, the honor given to soldiers who are injured in combat. You'll hear more about that later on. Before we get there, I want to let you know in advance that Syd's injuries were significant, and he is honest about what he experienced. There are also sound effects in this episode that evoke the feeling of combat. Sensitive listeners, please be aware. Now, on to the focus of this two-part episode. Syd LeBrun is not your typical World War II veteran. Here are a few important details you should know about him. First, he lives with a black cat named Dolly, after the artist Salvador.
Oh, you sweetheart. That you little thing she did, just a baby. Yes, I'm telling you a story.
He's Jewish and grew up on Long Island. He loves beer.
You like a beer? I have a friend that brings beer. They always bring the same kind.
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to drink any alcohol, so I have a lot of beer.
Likes to flirt.
I even brought a six-pack to the UNCG girls at the corner where I left it as a housewarming gift.
He owns a vintage pinball machine on which he once beat the actor Kurt Russell after a chance meeting at a ski resort. When he was younger, Syd loved skiing and tennis and meeting people, mostly women, and parties and traveling. After he came home from the war, he embraced life as only a person who faced death can. It was on December 28th, 1944, during the Battle of the Bulge, that he almost died in the Ardennes forest in Belgium.
Now, a combat infantry rifleman is probably the most expendable person in the Army. You just throw them, and you just say after a while, "Oh, it's too bad they died. Oh, it's a shame. They were so brave," and then you forget about it.
Syd's journey from boyhood in Long Island to combat infantry riflemen in snowy Belgium was a long one, marked by chance, circumstance, and fortune, both good and bad. Let's go back to the very beginning, back to Long Island, New York, to meet Syd and his family, including his parents, Max and Norma. Max LeBrun was born in Paris, France, and as a young man quit school to become an apprentice diamond setter. In his spare time, he loved to visit the Louvre and sketch pictures of the great master's paintings, or to the opera where he watched from high up in the balcony where children and the poor sat for free. His life in France came to an end in 1914 with the outbreak of World War I. He was 20 years old, ripe for enlistment or the draft. His mother urged him to immigrate to America to escape the fighting. He settled in the Lower East Side of Manhattan and found work as a diamond setter in the heart of the Jewish district. It was there he met Syd's mother, Norma. Norma was born in Odessa, Russia. In 1901, her father brought her to the United States when she was only 5 years old, fleeing the Cossacks who were intent on destroying the Russian Jews. Her father found work as a peddler selling goods from a pushcart. By 1920, the Lower East Side had a Jewish population of almost 400,000. Somehow, in the midst of this crush of humanity, Max and Norma found each other and fell in love. Max began to earn a good living, so he and Norma settled on Long Island, the more affluent suburb of Manhattan. Their first son, Bernard, was born in 1921. Their second and last son, Sydney, was born in 1924. The family prospered together. They were the embodiment of the American dream. Syd enjoyed a happy life with his family as the Great Depression came and went. He was a popular student who played in the band and acted in plays. He excelled in school, making top marks. In fact, he was on track to graduate a semester early in December 1941. His future looked bright. Then, just before graduation, Pearl Harbor was bombed by the Japanese. That event yanked Syd and his classmates into adulthood, one small part of an entire generation that was suddenly destined for war. Syd enrolled in college, majoring in engineering, hoping it might keep him from the draft.
I was going to Georgia Tech, and the government lies a lot. Just simply lies. And the government said, you can enlist in something called the ASTP, Army Specialized Training Program. You can enlist in that or be drafted. The limit, say, December 25th. So I talked to my father, and he didn't know anything more than I knew. I guess you better enlist. You don't want to be drafted. Because if you enlist, they'll leave you stay at school because they need engineers for the war effort. So I was enlisted with some other people at the last minute. The deadline was, we made the deadline. So now I was in enlisted reserve corps. So I'm still at school. Now, they said they would stay at school until I'm finished. Well, they changed their minds. They put us in this Army Specialized Training Program, but before we went in that, they would give us basic training in Texas. So all the people from college were at Camp Hood, Texas, sweltering at 100-degree heat, taking basic training for 13 weeks. In one set of fatigues, no change of clothing, and a rifle, I had an old British Enfield rifle. You couldn't leave the camp, and there was no fence. It was hell. Except we had fun after, just with the guys. They were all of my own age. We had fun. We would come in from the heat and walk in the shower and wash the clothes and wash yourself, maybe dress in a pair of boxer shorts, and let the clothes dry out on the bed. You didn't have any clothes. And before that, we would go sometimes to the PX and drink a gallon of milk. So then after basic training, they did send us to college. I went to Brooklyn Polytech. And then after one semester, they decided they would close Army Specialized Training Program. And they'll send us to maneuvers in Louisiana. Yeah, our maneuvers, they would give us flak ammo, and you shoot you shoot the pikes, and when you're running around, and we were crossing a river, the Sabine River. So I figured that the guys were so happy they got the bikes. I said, here, take mine. Go ahead and take it. I don't care to pretend that I was a soldier. So they shot and all this. I didn't shoot. Then you have to clean your rifle. It's dirty. You have to put the patches and clean it. And then they inspect it. Well, you stand up and they grab your rifle. So the officer grabbed it. He came to me. He grabbed the rifle, looked at it. He said, "You've done a fine job. It looks like it's never been fired." Well, it had been. Well, that's exactly what happened. I gave the other guys something to play with. Well, I was annoyed being assigned a job or a specialty. I thought I would be like a general in intelligence or something like that. They wouldn't need help because I was a valedictorian in my high school class. So I thought I was a pretty smart guy. So I go up to the officer. He said, "Soldier, did you ever fire the M1 rifle?" I said, "No, sir. I had a Garand." And he said, "Well, you're rifling. You're MOS 741 or whatever it is." Thanks. So what about the general staff? Nothing. I was the lowest thing you could have. The most expendable part of the army. Oh, the life expectancy of an combat infantry rifleman is 22 days.
His training ended and Syd joined the caravan of young men who headed east to New York to board a Liberty ship heading for Europe. His ship was one of many in a massive convoy.
On the convoy, and there was the troop ship, lots of them, in the middle, and then on either side of the oil tankers, and on either side of that is the freighters, on either side of that are the destroyers. It's a big convoy, wherever you can see, it's a thing. It's ships. And what do you know, we landed in Swansea, Wales. We didn't know where we were going. They don't tell us anything. They keep it a big secret. We landed in Swansea, Wales, and as we're walking down the gangplank with a duffel bag and kit, I remember this was my birthday. I was 20. I turned from 19 to 20. I was 20 years old. Happy birthday! As I got off the ship.
Syd and a buddy were transported to Tenby, Wales, where they helped set up a general's headquarters. They were given lodging in the servants' quarters, and for the first time in a long time, he had his own room and a bit of privacy. He and his buddy worked more as servants than soldiers, but Syd relished in the good food and the freedom of the assignment. He borrowed a bike and rode into town, where he met a young woman who worked at a bakery and quickly struck up a romance.
Well, by this time I had a girlfriend, but she didn't have hardly anything to eat herself. There were no restaurants. You couldn't buy food. So I said to my friend, to my buddy, what do you say we go back to Haverford West, where we started from, because we don't have any orders. There's nobody to give us any orders. We don't know what to do. So he agreed. So we hitchhiked back to Haverford West, and we went in the order room. I said, the first time I said, "Oh my God, I forgot about you. You're not even on the register." Oh my God. Get your barracks bag ready, because we're going to leave tomorrow at 6 o'clock in the morning. If we had come back one day later, I would have missed the war. I would probably marry the girl that I was living with and forgot about the war. One day. It took us 3 days to cross the channel. We get to France. When they found out we were near Le Havre, and there's the beach. And then I was told, go overboard and get in the landing craft. What do you mean, go overboard? You mean, it's a big ship, it's tall as this building. They're cargo nets that you climb over the rail and put your feet in and go down. Oh, that's the only time I've been nervous. I was actually scared. Not nervous, just plain scared. I never saw a cargo net in my life. I didn't even know what you call them. And there's no room but your toes, especially when the ship leans this way, the rope is tight against the steel, and you can't put your toes in. And you got your pack, your rifle, your gas mask, and all the canteen, the first aid kit, and everything else. I was carrying more than I weighed. I weighed 130 pounds only. And they told me to go overboard. And then when you get to the landing craft, there are two guys that help you. So anyway, we're in the landing craft. Get taken to a muddy field where trucks been driving all day long. So I look at it's all mud. So they say, pitch your pup tents. Looking at the mud, and they say, pitch your pup tents. And no fires. So my buddy and I look at the mud, and we say to each other, let's go to the farmhouse over yonder and get some straw. I'm sure they have straw. So they did. So we went over there, we spread the straw on the mud. We were living like in the walled-off Astoria. We were just absolutely perfect.
Unbeknownst to Syd, that night German troops were quietly amassing in the Ardennes forest near Bastogne, Belgium, about 250 miles away. In the dark of night, in total secrecy, the Germans assembled over 200,000 men, 1,000 tanks, anti-tank guns, assault guns, and artillery for one final, massive military push in an attempt to reverse the course of the war. At 5:30 on the morning of December 16th, as Syd slept in his bed of straw, the Germans began a 90-minute shelling barrage along 80 miles of the Allied front lines. Syd awoke the next morning to a changed reality. The American troops quickly ramped up to full throttle, and the Green replacement troops were assembled and shipped east to Belgium to join the fight. The troops boarded boxcars called 40 and 8s, as they were just large enough to hold 40 men or 8 horses. These rickety, unheated cars measured just 20 feet long and 8.5 feet wide.
Well, we got 40 men in a little car with rations piled up in the doorways. So there isn't much room. So we can't lie down, you have to stand up. So we stood up. We don't know where we're going, how long we're going to be there. So after a while, the train stopped in a freight yard or something. And up front, when we looked out, we saw somebody poking with a bayonet at a wine car, which is a big barrel of wood. It's just in the shape of a barrel on a boxcar. And meanwhile, he held his helmet to catch the wine. So we thought that's a good idea. So we run over the car, take off the helmet, and get the wine, and bring it back to the car, and gulp it down. And we were happy as hell. Mm-hmm. Until about a short time later, when dysentery hit us all. Because the helmets were full of soap scum and shaving cream, everything imaginable. And there are no bathrooms in the 48th. At best, there's 4 guys and the 2 doors. And the rest, the 36 of us, were every man for himself. And pretty soon, we found ourselves in a place where they didn't understand French, they didn't understand German, and they didn't understand English. So we figured we were in Holland, with that Dutch thing.
Syd's division marched up to 25 miles a day over cold, snowy terrain through Holland and into Belgium. Once they arrived, conditions continued to worsen.
And it was really cold. It was colder and colder as time wore on. It was said that it was 30 or 40 degrees below zero. It was so cold in the forest, we tried to sleep with pine needles covering us up. It didn't work. We tried to sleep in a group. The body heat would warm us up. It didn't work. I just sat around. I stood around on my feet, just freezing. Just absolutely, I still remember that in the forest, freezing. And then it seems like we're going in a certain direction with some purpose in mind. And we happened to go past the 2nd Armored Division, which with the tanks. And I personally was glad to see the tanks. Oh boy, the tanks are nice to have. And then after a while, we were ordered to get on the tanks. Now, how you get on a tank, I don't know, but you didn't really know. You just climb up somehow. You're just 20 years old, you know how to do all this stuff. So we're on the tanks, and the minute we get on them, all of a sudden, enemy shells come raining down us. They're phosphorus shells, the ones that burn. So everybody got off, it just dispersed. And I didn't see the tanks again until later on, when they were parked in the woods, under cover of the woods. And those guys said to us, "You need any grenades, or you need any rounds for your rifle?" Yes, we did. So I personally got 2 grenades, and they stripped the machine gun belts and threw the rounds to the guys for the magazines, for the clips. Now, I didn't think anything of it. You do anything for a buddy. But why were these guys so nice to us? Now I know. They knew that we were going to attack by ourselves and not have any tank cover, because we were ordered up to a line of departure at the edge of the woods. And that night, we heard the clanking of tanks, the pins of tanks. So it was obvious to us that the tanks that they had with their 88 millimeter guns would shoot further and more accurately than our little 75s from the World War I. So the tankers knew they're not going to fight. That's why I think they were so nice to us. So, in the morning, somewhere around 6 o'clock, we were ordered to attack. Now, that's after lying down at the edge of the forest, get up in that snow, heavy snow, right up to your thighs, and cold, and go start running toward the enemy, toward the town which we were going to attack. It's about 3-4 football fields down the road. It's on this side there's trees, on this side there's trees. It's just opening a farmer's field, just running across. We were going to take the town. And well, you can only run so far before you have to rest in that snow. So we hit the ground and just sort of lie there in a minute. And I thought to myself, how do you take a town? What do you do? You stand on the corner and say, I'm going to take you? How do you take a town? I really didn't know. So we run a little bit again, and I'm right in the front of everybody with the lieutenant right behind me. And I was carrying a signal corps radio. Somebody strapped the radio on my back. The lieutenant and I are close together. He was behind me. And we're just lying there. I said to him, I have an idea. What's your idea? What do you say we call the artillery up and have him blast the church steeple, because that's probably an OP of the enemy. That's where they'd be. Well, that's a good idea. Call up the artillery. And I told them to fire one smoke shell, and where it lands, we'll see where it lands, and then we'll correct the coordinates and can fire for effect. Well, the smoke shell never came. So I began to look up for the smoke shell, and that's when I got hit.
Stay tuned. In the next episode of Soldier's Heart, you'll hear the rest of Syd's story. You don't want to miss it. Soldier's Heart is written and produced by me, Cindy Briggs, and features veteran stories from North Carolina. We honor vets by listening to their stories. You can follow along on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Soldier's Heart NC. If you have an idea for a story or interview, email us at soldiersheartnc@gmail.com. Special thanks to the New Winston Museum of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where all of these stories are archived. You can learn more about the museum at newwinston.org.